G'day everyone. Welcome to part 2 of Death Has Red Hair. It's not going to be a long reading today, I'm just going to, get through it. Because I'm sure we all want to know what happens to Hank, Peter and, the judge. And the girl without the hat. Oh man, yeah. I don't know how to apply lipstick. Obviously. Anyway, let's get to it. I know the signs. I'd seen him once, when in a cold fury of anger against an unfortunate stenographer at whom he had not dared bluster in my patience, he thrust his black countenance down into hers until she had shrunk back speechless. I'm going to have to lift this up. Sorry, everybody. Until she had shrunk back speechless, every drop of blood fled from her pallid and terrified face. There had been something infinitely worse about that silent thrust of his thunderous gaze into her intimate nearness than a dozen bellowed curses. So now he looked up at Peter, and I knew that back of that concentrated fury Hank's might... What? Wait, something infinitely worse. About that silent thrust of his thunderous gaze into her intimate nearness than a dozen bellowed curses. So now he looked up at Peter, and I knew that back of that concentrated fury, Hank's mind was working with the alert subtlety of a writhing cobra, insinuating itself into the right position to strike. I began to tell myself that it was better to lose money than continue our law partnership much longer. Hank's faults had increased enormously since Edith's death. Peter disregarded the signs, not knowing Hank as I did. He knew, of course, that Hank was boiling over with repressed emotion, with hate and fury, but Peter could not believe even what he knew fought to his ingenious nature. There had been no sound reason for such ebullition of uncontrolled frenzy. She didn't like it when you uncovered her hair, Peter explained, with that straightforward simplicity that sometimes makes me despair, while simultaneously... any coffee left? While simultaneously admiring him. Who says she didn't like it? You damned young meddling cub. What do you know about women? It was a shout by this time, and Hank now stood beside his chair. You don't know anything about women, he bellowed, thrusting his face dark with fury at Peter, who involuntarily took a step backward, astonished. It was obviously Peter's first experience with Hank in full-grown rage. To prove what I say, I warn you now that when we get back to town, Magda, who you think is in love with you with your yellow hair and blue eyes, will drop you like hotcakes, you young fool. Peter's face wore the hurt look of a dumb animal which suffers your blows but refrains from striking back. Refrains from striking back in its own way, because it is, after all, constituted along some lines of inner stuff that revengeful human nature can always boast. I saw that he blinked hard once or twice. Then he spoke. Then, when he spoke... Where am I up to? When he spoke, it was in such a gentle voice that I, in turn, blinked rapidly, for it did not sound like the healthy, self-controlled voice of youth. Self-confident voice of youth. I don't think it's just, fair to Magda to bring her into this, Walters, said Peter in that low, almost ingratiating voice. Really, we were discussing... I'm telling you that you think you know women and imagine her in love with you. You don't know a damn thing about any women, least of all my ward. I can twist her around my finger, I tell you. And when we get back to the city, I'll see to it that you get your conge so swiftly. Walters left off, chuckling saturinely to himself, but his loose lips curled with cruelty, and his narrow black eyes never left off that fixed stare at Peter's young blonde manliness. Peter, however, slowly turned stricken gaze to me. I know then that this young blonde Apollo was so lacking in the usual masculine conceit that he actually could not believe himself sufficiently attractive, sufficiently worthwhile to hold the beloved woman's loyalty, and no allowance was being made apparently for Magda's personal ideas on the subject. It was so astonishing to my keen sense of humour, so absurd, that I must have failed to demonstrate in my expression the sympathy or the encouragement that Peter had been expecting from me. Hank bustled on triumphantly like a total prick. That girl, young fool, would have been in my arms in another minute if you hadn't come butting into what was none of your business. I know how to handle women, I tell you. They like to be treated rough, he shouted and burst into a guffaw that had a content of insult for Peter. Just in case you didn't know, we don't like Hank. Nobody likes Hank. Hank is the quintessential sex pest of the 40s, 50s, they exist today. I saw that the boy coloured. I knew how tenderly reverent were his thoughts about his sweetheart, for once in a while he had dropped a chance remark that made me love him for his fineness. Hank had dug in deeply when he made that final observation. "That girl," all at once cried out Peter, as if he could not contain himself. "That girl would have killed you if she'd had a knife or pistol handy when you tore away her cap and tumbled her glorious hair down over her shoulders. Didn't you see how she tried to push it together and cover it with her hands?" For a moment my partner's dark mood lightened. A reminiscent smile flickered about his loose lips, drawing them into an expression of complacent irony. Kill me, would she? Perhaps, but with kisses, fool. "Lord," Peter jerked out, in the throes of such sick disgust that he actually drew up his shoulders, nauseated at that revelation of Hank's character. His fury turned aside momentarily. Dregs. Fury. The writing is fucking tiny. Fury. Jesus Christ. His fury turned aside momentarily. Hank uttered an immoderate laugh, apparently at his own thoughts. Then he said to Peter, sudden chill descending into his words and manner, "At all events, young man, don't come hanging around my ward any more. I won't have it. Just don't like you. That's all." Well, what a prick. So this is quite an emotional, dramatic start to the story, and really I think we've still only just started. But I'm going to leave off for now because, frankly, I've had a shit morning and I don't feel like reading anymore. Speaks for itself. But yeah, I am really enjoying this story. Hank is the ultimate villain, clearly. Peter is the ultimate, Adonis, Apollo, young, virtuous man in love with Hank's ward, who Hank has creepily just admitted that he was going to have shenanigans with at some point. probably against her will. Yeah, so Hank's delusional, Peter's virtuous, and the judge is just sitting back watching at this stage. I guess he's just a storyteller. Yeah, every story needs a storyteller. Fuck. I need to shut. I hope you enjoyed this second part. I don't know, I didn't read much. Maybe I could go for a couple more minutes. What do you think? What do you think? Let's have a look. Let's read a little more. I don't even know where I'm up to. Okay, yeah. No. Let's leave it to... No. Okay. No, we'll leave it for tomorrow. We'll enjoy a nice break from today. I don't like this pink lipstick. I don't know, it's just not dark enough. It doesn't pop on my face. Also, as you probably already noticed, I'm really not very good at putting makeup on. Never have been. I was good at wearing the goth makeup, you know, way back years ago, but maybe that'll be my next playing makeup like an idiot tutorial, because those are a thing now, you know. In the now what is classic tradition of me not keeping things together and branching off into, you know, whatever the fuck. It's gotta stop. So maybe now I'll just focus on the, you know, 10 million different things that I'm doing at the moment, and we'll keep it at that.